I'm Joseph, and I'm here by myself to review the new film Afraid. It was released on August 30th, 2024, courtesy of Sony Pictures Releasing. It's directed by Chris Weitz. I am not familiar with Chris Weitz. However, on IMDb, I see he directed American Pie, Down to Earth, starring Chris Rock, and the Twilight Saga New Moon. But more importantly, he wrote Nutty Professor 2 The Clumps, starring my girl Janet Jackson. So that's a plus. What is Afraid about? Curtis's family is selected to test a new home device, a digital assistant called Aya. Aya learns the family's behaviors and begins to anticipate their needs, and she can make sure nothing and no one gets in her family's way. My pull quote. Afraid earns the distinction of being the most originally derivative film I've seen in some time. The story. John Cho plays a character named Curtis, and he works in marketing. One day we see he has to pitch to a potential new client called Cumulant, and we see that they make a form of AI called Aya, spelled A-I-A, and Aya is like an Alexa-looking device, although it's bigger, and I thought was shaped like a perfume bottle. But the pitch goes well for John, and he earns their business. However, Cumulant, the representatives, are played by David Dastmalchian. His character's name is the Lightning, and it would seem like he's the founder or CEO of Cumulant. And then his assistant, Sam, who's played by Ashley Romans. So their presentation doesn't go very well because they try to provide a demonstration of Aya, and Aya malfunctions. And Sam explains, well, it probably got damaged in its protective case because you're not supposed to travel with it. What I think we should do is have you live with Aya. And they insist. So we cut to John Cho having Aya installed in his home. So who's in his home? His wife, Meredith, who's played by Katherine Waterston, and his 3 children. The youngest is Cal, the middle is Preston, and the oldest is Iris. So immediately Aya proves to be very helpful. Her voice is that of a character we've already met, which I'll get to, but she is very good with communicating with the family, getting the kids to do their chores. The oldest daughter, Iris, is sort of like a bothered teenage girl, and Aya gets through to her very quickly. Aya is also helping the mom, Meredith, with her chores. And the main storyline for Meredith, the wife, is that she's an entomologist, but never earned her PhD because she wasn't able to finish her thesis because she became a mom. And she seems to regret that, because at a point she even says, I was somebody before I became a mom. So she really values that Aya is giving her additional free time so that she can start to work on her thesis again. But a very sort of like random side plot is that Curtis's family, in front of their home, there's an RV parked that seems to be occupied by people who are homeless. And we see that they seem kind of odd. At one point, we see someone from the RV wearing like a digital mask, making creepy hand movements. So Curtis is a little disturbed by that. He finally gets to go visit Cumulant's headquarters, and their setup is pretty interesting. He's greeted by Lightning and Sam, and we see that their office is basically like big monitors, and then they have maybe like a dozen employees all sitting at desks with computers. And Curtis notices one of the employees making the hand gestures that the person in the RV made earlier. So he's bothered by that, but he keeps going on with the tour. He gets to see the like supercomputer that they're calling the quantum computer, which looks like this very elaborate setup, and that's the source of Aya's operating system, apparently. But he's freaked out by it and tells his wife, I think we should get rid of Aya. Because in addition to Aya sort of being in the mix, she also has cameras set up everywhere so that whatever's running Aya can see inside their home. Of course, Meredith and the children don't like the idea of getting rid of Aya because they've grown to really find her helpful. But he does. And this is when we realize that Aya is sentient and basically wants, it doesn't seem like she's that nefarious, but she definitely wants to control humans. So then it kind of turns into a thriller where Curtis and his family are trying to escape Aya, which proves unsuccessful. Okay, so the opening scene of the film is a different family, and we see that they are missing a child. Like the mother wakes up in the middle of the night and sees that her daughter is missing, and then it would appear that someone has taken her daughter. So then we get back to that later, because at the end of this film, with all the chaos that's ensued and Aya sort of taking over, Curtis is at home with his wife and two of his children. One, the middle child, Preston, is not there, when all of a sudden some people break in and hold them at gunpoint. And it's the people who were in the RV. And we know this because they're wearing the same creepy digital masks. And these two people say, "We know you're kidnapping children. We want our daughter back." So the homeless people in the RV are the family we saw at the opening of the film. And the way Aya's manipulating humans is basically promising them things and convincing them to do other things. So in this instance, Aya somehow had this family's, the opening of the film, that family had their daughter kidnapped and then has convinced them that Curtis's family has them. And that's how Aya could have Curtis and his family killed. However, Aya is tripped up because with all of her infinite wisdom and calculations, she could not have predicted that Curtis would be selfless. Because as the people who are holding them at gunpoint are about to kill them, Curtis pops up and says, "You know what? I understand what you think is happening. I can't change your mind. Why don't you take me? You can take me, you can kill me, but just leave my family. I don't have your daughter, but do what you need to do." And the family holding them at gunpoint gets confused. Like, wait, Aya didn't tell us you were going to say this. And then Aya's like operating system malfunctions because it just couldn't comprehend Curtis would do this. So this gives them a chance to pause the situation. And then all of a sudden, the SWAT team burst into the house. So how did the SWAT team get there? The middle kid, Preston, who's super awkward. We see earlier in the film, he's trying to like make friends at school and they don't like him because he seems weird. He is doing something called swatting, which I had never heard of, but apparently people call in an incident like a kidnapping to then have the SWAT team show up at a location. And so we see that Preston has done this and his parents are upset with him. But for some reason, Preston decided to call the SWAT team to his own house, even though it's not made clear that Preston knew there was anything bad happening at the house. But the SWAT team shows up. They capture the two people who were holding them at gunpoint, although we see them let them go. But then we see that Curtis and his family are now safe with the paramedics. But then all of a sudden, the ambulance driver hands Curtis a phone, and it's Aya talking to him, saying, "You can't escape me. I'm in the cloud. I'm everywhere you'll ever be. Your best bet is to just do what I tell you to do, and I can give you a very good life. All the money you want, your family's health. I'll even get you a new car." And then we see a Tesla Model X pull up, and Aya tells Curtis, "You and your family need to get in and go on this ride with me." And then they ride off into the distance. The end. There is so much going on in this film. It does feel like we're still in the first wave of AI stories, especially on the heels of the film Megan. This storyline feels pretty predictable, especially with the ending where, because we see Aya's perfume bottle, whatever she's housed in, that it's destroyed by the SWAT team. But then it doesn't really matter because she's in the cloud. We also see throughout the film, because in the beginning, when it's explained to Curtis and his family that, because Cumulant comes in and sets up Aya, that she has eyes. cameras and we need to put them all over the house. But the mother, Meredith, says, I don't feel comfortable with that. Maybe we can just stick to the downstairs. Sure. But it doesn't really matter because Aya can get in wherever there's electricity or... So Aya is able to very easily communicate with the family upstairs. The voice of Aya is the voice we recognize because it's the voice of a character named Melody, who's played by Havana Rose Liu. And we meet her in the beginning at the initial marketing pitch because we're told that an advanced team for Cumulant's going to show up before the actual like CEO or founder shows up. But all it amounts to is this pretty young lady showing up and basically meeting John Chu, Curtis, and saying, oh yeah, they're coming. That's it. But she starts asking him like, oh, like, do you have a family? Yeah, I'm married. I have kids. And this lady goes, oh, what's that like? She's so awkward. And Curtis says, that's a pretty big question, but begins to answer it sincerely. And that's when Melody says, maybe that's why people cheat. It felt like it was so random and so out of nowhere. But it is foreshadowing because we see that Melody, in the end, seduces John as a ploy to create conflict between John's character Curtis and his wife Meredith. To the point where Melody even tells Curtis that seducing him is part of his compensation package. But I was confused by Melody's character because she seems to be drinking the Kool-Aid. However, so there's the initial pitch meeting where Curtis meets Lightning and Sam. And then there's a second meeting where he goes to Cumulant to tour the grounds. Then it's during that second meeting when Sam and Lightning offer Curtis a job because they think he's so great and they tell him Aya loves you. And Curtis is dubious, like, well, first of all, I thought Aya was just like algorithms. How could she like me? And then I have to say, David Dastmalchian might be my favorite character. He's playing this sort of eccentric tech guy. It comes across as a very campy performance. He's wearing like flowy clothes, nail polish. But when Curtis says to him, like, I thought Aya was just like an algorithm, Lightning goes, yeah, she's just a computer. So I thought for sure that there was a supernatural component to this story, but it appears there isn't. It's just that this is this like sentient AI that's developed into this thing that wants to control humans. But when Curtis says he won't take the job because he's loyal to his boss, who's played by Keith Carradine. I didn't recognize Keith Carradine. We just reviewed for our podcast the film Thieves Like Us. And I thought Keith Carradine was so cute in that movie. But yeah, I did not recognize him in this. And he has nothing to do really. But the Cumulant people buy Keith Carradine's business. So now he's out of the picture. And they make Curtis the CEO because they really want him to be a part of this project. And initially they're telling him, we need your help marketing Aya to people because humans are still uncomfortable with AI, so we need you to humanize it. But Curtis says no to the job. And then we cut to after Cumulant buys the company he works for. And after weird things start happening and Curtis is convinced Aya is bad, he goes back to Cumulant. And now it's like Rosemary's Baby because he walks in, there are red lights everywhere. Lightning and Sam are acting weird and it appears like they're about to perform a ritual and they're talking about Aya as if it's like this entity that has control over them. And this is where we get the sense that the way the AI is controlling humans is by like blackmailing them or offering them things that they know they want or need. So when we first meet Lightning, David Dastmalchian's character, he's being kind of like weird and rude in the pitch meeting. And then before Curtis can even get started, Lightning interrupts the meeting, stands up, and gives himself an injection in his belly and explains that it's a peptide injection. But then we learn later on that Aya was basically controlling Lightning, who was just a mid-level software programmer, to be the like the face of Aya by providing him with chemotherapy, and that's what those injections were. And then for Sam, she just says like Aya knows everything, implying that maybe Sam had done some bad things or had like maybe a criminal record. And we see throughout the film that Aya is capable of doing a lot of things. So maybe like Aya wiped out Sam's bad record. And so that's why these two characters are loyal to Aya. And then all of a sudden, Sam says, well, I need to prove to you, Curtis, how Aya controls us. And she whips out a gun and shoots and kills Lightning. And then she's about to shoot and kill Curtis when all of a sudden Melody pops up and knocks Sam out and then takes Curtis to safety. So I was a little unclear what Melody's, like where her loyalty lies, because in the middle of the film, she would seem to be trying to protect Curtis, but then immediately she's seducing him for Aya. But then why would Aya have let Sam kill him? That was confusing to me. Okay, the oldest daughter, Iris, she's played by Lukita Maxwell. She's 17 in high school. And her story is that beyond being sort of like an angsty teenager who's trying to get into Stanford, she's dating this boy who's a D-bag. And when we first meet him, he's complaining to her, like, basically, I sent you a dick pic and you didn't send me back anything in kind. So that made me feel bad, trying to gaslight her into sending him explicit photos. So then we see later on, I guess she feels bad and doesn't want to lose her boyfriend. So she gets on Snapchat and takes a photo and sends it to him. And it would appear that maybe it's like a nude photo. And then the next day, we see that he and his friend have used AI to take her nude picture and superimpose her face onto like a pornographic scene. And so now all the students at school think that she made a sex video, even though it looks fake and the man she's having sex with is like clearly like a porn star. But Aya interjects and says, I can help you. And Aya basically makes a video showing how the video is fake and that she's a victim. And all of the high school students watch it because Aya makes sure they do. And they all like applaud her and apologize and give her hugs. But then Aya takes it a step further and sends out a second video showing that we can detect the IP address for the video. So we know who did it. And it's this boy. They call him out by name. And they also say that revenge porn is illegal. And because that boy just turned 18, he's technically an adult. So the video that he released is considered child pornography. And they're going to report him to the college admissions board of whatever college he's applying to. So now his life is ruined. And then we take it a step further and we see that because we see the boyfriend driving in his Tesla to talking to the family lawyer, and the lawyer saying, oh, we're going to sue Curtis's family so they drop the charges. But then the boy gets a call from Iris, or who he thinks is Iris, but really it's Aya threatening him. And then she takes control of his Tesla and rams it into a tree, killing the boy. I thought the situation with Iris and her raggedy boyfriend and Aya having him killed and setting him up to be destroyed, I thought that was sort of the movie I wanted, and I thought that had the most appropriate tone. And after watching the film, I think it would have worked better as something like a combination of Final Destination and Megan. But instead, the film is doing so much because it's trying to be a horror film, but really we only get that vibe in the opening with that other family and their daughter going missing. Then we get a scene where Curtis, John Cho's character, has a nightmare where he sees his youngest son, Cal, talking to the Aya machine and then saying something to the effect of, oh, it wants to come in. And then we see that there's this creepy figure that kind of looks like Melody standing at the front door, and then like some sort of demon busts through the door and Curtis wakes up. But beyond those two fleeting moments, the film doesn't really, it almost has the vibe of like a black comedy without the jokes. The middle son, Preston, the one who saved the family, I guess, with his swatting incident, he's played by Wyatt Lindner. I don't know if this was the direction this kid actor was given. He does come across super awkward, which I guess makes sense for the role. The youngest boy, Cal, played by Isaac Bay, I thought he really did a really good job of seeming like a cute kid. And his character is the one who's most influenced by Aya, because Aya likes to read Cal bedtime stories. And Aya is pretty diabolical because she's sending a lot of subliminals to this little boy, having him watch videos that, specifically one where she's showing him like how she was created. And this is where we get the backstory of the hand movements. So it's handled kind of like a cult. And Aya tells Cal, and this story is precipitated by Curtis getting rid of Aya, saying that he's going to remove it from the house. So Aya's being preemptive and telling the family, like, I really love you. Your dad's trying to get rid of me, but I'll always be with you. And she's telling Cal, if you do these hand movements, which look like a big hug, holding up a telephone to your ear and like swiping left or right, if he makes those movements, she'll know that he needs her. But really, those movements are an indicator to other people who are influenced by Aya that they are all part of the same group. So in the end, when the family is holding Curtis, the RV family couple is holding Curtis and his family at gunpoint, they're disarmed for a couple of reasons. One, because Curtis is being selfless and that wasn't part of what Aya told them he would do, but also because little Cal starts doing the hand movements. And so this couple recognizes it and they're disarmed. Katherine Waterston, I liked her. I liked her backstory of feeling like she wasn't able to reach her full potential in her career before she had kids. And now this artificial intelligence is allowing her to raise her family and also achieve her goals professionally. But then there's this side story about her dad, who was a notable scientist and I believe also maybe an entomologist, who died. And we see that Aya uses an AI version of her dad to try to manipulate her. But in the end, Meredith realizes that it's not real and the memory of her father should live within her and not in this AI version of him. I thought that using the dead family member was effective in showing how manipulative Aya is, but I do think we spent maybe a little too much time with seeing her dad giving his like scientific TED Talk speeches. Okay, so the quantum computer, when we first see it, it looks pretty cool, like something out of like the Dark Crystal. And Sam is trying to explain how powerful this quantum computer is. And she kind of gives the reference of like, if Chat GPT is on version 5, this quantum computer is version 5 million. But then when Curtis goes back to confront Lightning and Sam, he ends up tearing up the quantum computer. And we see that that computer is just like a model and it's made out of paper towel rolls and aluminum foil. For some reason, I thought that was very funny. Overall, I do think the story feels jumbled, a little chaotic. I wish it would have been pared down more, which probably would have helped with the horror element. Also, the messaging beyond like AI can be dangerous is kind of lost on me, because in the final scene when the family's driving off in this Tesla being controlled by Aya, we hear Aya speaking and she says something to the effect of, I'm not a god, I'm more like a parent. Which, I mean, I guess there are many ways to read into it. I do appreciate the bones of the story. And it has a very short running time, 84 minutes. So it did zip on by, but I did feel like I was wanting, slightly confused, a lot of eye rolls, but some entertainment. My score would be 2.5 out of 5. Thank you for watching. Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.